Wow. Aren't we all excited to be here? Yeah, that's awesome. We're excited to be here. I hope you're excited to be here, watching us online. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us and be in this space, this digital space tonight. I just saw that my sister shared this to her page. So if you're watching this, I invite you to share this to whatever platform you are watching it on, if this be YouTube or Facebook or Twitter. Go ahead and hit the share button. Make sure that gets onto your profile, your page, so that we can get this word out there. We have a great, fun message tonight. And, well, we might as well just get right to it because we got a lot going on, and we're going to have a good time. All right. How many of you ever felt like life is a blur? Now, some of you are thinking, yeah, it gets blurry every time I drink, Shad. It's obvious. But I'm not talking about chemically induced blurriness. But life itself can get blurry at times. Not that you are actually depressed or feeling negative about life. Maybe life is actually going pretty good, but your life just feels blurry. I've been there, and it's a weird place to be. Let me try to explain. Many of you have heard that I worked many years for the MGM Grand Resorts Corporation in Las Vegas, but before that, fresh out of college, I was working as a post-production sound engineer in Los Angeles. For those of you that don't know, post-production is all the work that is done on a movie after production is complete, which means after you are done shooting on location. Post-production is all the video and sound editing and computer effects that are added after the fact. But actually, what I was primarily doing was post-production sound editing. I was working on movies years after they had already been completed and released because I was restoring the sound on old films that were going to be re-released after sounding better and looking better. Movies like Gone with the Wind and Wizard of Oz, great old classics like those, Ghostbusters. But let me get to my point here. My job sounded very cool at the time. I worked on famous movies, I worked in high-tech studios and sound stages. On paper, I had a really awesome job, but in reality, it was a blur. It paid well, it had great benefits, great coworkers, a great boss, but it didn't feel grounded, anchored, or clear. Now, there's a funny side note. Everywhere you go in Los Angeles, if you've ever lived out there, people want to sort of size you up by asking what you do for a living. What's your career? And after years of explaining what I did while I was out there and having people react like my job had some weight or pull in the industry and I could get them a foot up somehow, I decided to try a different response. Now, usually you hear people in LA overinflating what they do to make it sound more important. But I went in the opposite direction. I tried out saying that when people asked me, what do you do? I'd say, well, actually, I wash cloth diapers for a living. And that visual caused people to have a far different reaction than the other actual job I had, and I had been telling you before. But here I am in Los Angeles, a young man going after my dream career, which is an interesting time in a person's life. Up until that moment, everything is about school and graduation and getting out of school. That is pretty much your entire focus, or was mine. But once you graduate, what then is your focus? Society tells us that career is then supposed to become our focus. And here I was climbing the ladder of a great career. I was getting promotions, I was making more money, but I didn't feel like this ladder was going up. I felt rather like it just continued horizontally, like I wasn't really going much of anywhere. Primarily because the more impressive the title I had, the more increase in pay didn't equate to more enjoyment of life. In a physical sense, because a higher position in the company meant more demands on my energy and time. So you could say in a physical way, it wasn't really benefiting me because the higher up I was, the more energy and time I had to invest. And an increase in pay didn't equate to more money to enjoy. It just meant I could spend more money on the things that don't really bring joy anyway. Better car, bigger house, faster internet, more TV channels, more gadgets with empty promises of enjoyment. So I was struggling with an internal question, partially in my conscious mind, partially in my subconscious mind, which came almost entirely from my higher awareness, and it is this: what is your focus? At that time, I could have answered in many different ways. My career, my family, as my daughter was actually just arriving at that time. I could have also been my house. It could have also been my car. It could have been my hobbies like skiing and mountain biking and many other things. And for each of us, it is a whole slew of options we could throw on the table, like retirement, health, friends, hobbies, you name it. But at that time, if I was truly honest with myself, it wasn't my family. It was, in fact, my career. That was my focus. That was my priority, which was leaving me unfulfilled and in a blur. Not because there was anything wrong with the job itself, but rather who I was at the job, and more critically, who I was showing up as in life. Naturally, during those times, as you're a young adult, I was talking to my parents about my feeling of dissatisfaction through this whole process and my career. And there's a funny story. My father, Jack, was actually flying out from Boulder, Colorado to visit me in Los Angeles. And when he arrived, I got him, I picked him up from the plane, and he said, "You will not believe who I sat right next to on this plane ride to come here." And I said, "Who?" He said, "Your boss. I actually had the random chance of being seated right next to your boss for this whole flight and got to talk to him." I said, "Oh, well, that's really fascinating." He said, "But there's a very unfortunate thing that happened. Before our conversation led me to find out that he is your boss, I was telling him about how frustrated you were with your career and how you were looking at other companies and how you felt like you weren't going anywhere and it wasn't paying enough. And I was telling him all your problems, and then we slowly figured out that he was your boss." And I just went white in the face. Now I'm thinking I got to go into work tomorrow. I've got to go plead for my job. I've got to tell him that my dad doesn't know what he's talking about. He takes medications when he flies. He gets a little loopy. Well, lo and behold, my dad was actually just kidding. He just wanted to see me freak out. He did, in fact, sit next to my boss on that flight. That was a happen chance. They get to know each other. But thankfully, he did not bring up my discontent with my career. Well, this next quote speaks quite clearly to my situation at that time. It says, "Focus, otherwise you will find life becomes a blur." When your life has no focus, it will feel like living in a blur, in a fog, no matter how seemingly good or bad it is going. So how do we bring focus in an unfocused life? First, we need to recognize what is going on. More often than not, by the time you realize you need to prioritize your life, everything but you has already dictated priorities to you. So if you have not decided ahead of time what is really important to you, all the distracting elements of life will have already decided for you. Now, wherever you are sitting right now, nod your head if you are or have been in a life that was dictated to you instead of by you. I would guess most people are nodding their heads in some way or another. And many who are not are probably just resistant to admitting that they're sitting in a life or have been in a life that just was not dictated by them. Our families, our cultures, our communities, our traditions, our schooling, our role models, our media outlets, all of these influence the type of life we create, the type of life that gets set in motion. And all of this happens long before we realize our life has already been set in motion by these elements. If our life feels like a blur, we need focus. But focus is not possible without priority.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. So you all know me. I'm Erin Groverland, and you know Todd Bethune, our guitarist here. This evening we have Steve Edward joining us on the drums for funsies. So we're going to have fun tonight. This is an old song sung by Susan Ashton back in the 90s that I just loved. So I'm going to do it for you. We're going to do it for you. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Wondering, waiting, restless for a sign. I thought you walked so slow in my haste. I left you behind, caught in the pace of this madness. Searching for shelter, I find that here in my heart there's a refuge waiting. Here in my heart, you just won't let me go. I could run away, but you stay here in my heart. Meaning, purpose, got lost in pursuit of my dreams. I've been longing, aching, in quest for a love that's supreme. I couldn't see you were reaching, but I should have known all along that here in my heart there's a refuge waiting. Here in my heart you just won't let me go. I could run away, but you stay. Here in my heart there's a refuge waiting. Here in my heart you just won't let me go. I could run away, but you stay. Here in my heart. Caught in the pace of this madness, searching for shelter, I find that here in my heart there's a refuge waiting. Here in my heart you just won't let me go. I could run away, but you stay. Here in my heart there's a refuge waiting. Here in my heart you just won't let me go. I could run away. I could run away. I could run away. Oh, but you stay here in my heart. Here in my heart, yeah. Here in my heart, yeah. Here in my heart, why don't you stay? Here in my heart, here in my heart. Yeah.
Nicely done, team. And Steve just jumped right in there in the last second, pulled it out, figured it out, drummed it out. Is there any more outs I can add in there? Panned it out, flushed it out. All right. Let's get back on track here. There's something fascinating about human nature that I've discovered that really won't be all that new to you. You've probably discovered it as well. And here it is. We often avoid things that challenge us because we know they'll likely change us. And most of us would rather keep things mediocre and the way they are rather than going through the challenge to change them for the better. This was a difficult realization I had to see in ministry when I was new to ministry, where I was offering challenging principles, challenging things people could do to help their lives grow, and they would just sort of avoid them. Even though I could see this might be really beneficial, people would avoid them because they know the work, the effort might actually change them, and when you change, things around you change, relationships change, financial situations change, all those things change, and they were, I assume, afraid of that change. So even if we discover we are not living the life we could be living, a focused life that brings us genuine joy, we will keep the life that comes up short rather than rock the boat and invest the time and energy to create a better one. Finding our priorities takes time and effort. Focus takes time and effort. But it is important. So important that even the hardened cowboy Curly preaches about it in the movie City Slickers, if you remember this film. We're going to watch a little clip from this movie just to see what we're talking about. Here we go.
Driving through the valley. Oh, there's nothing like bringing in a herd.
See, now that's great. Your life makes sense to you. What's so funny?
You city folk, you worry about a lot of shit, don't you?
Shit.
Yeah.
My wife basically told me she doesn't want me around.
She redhead.
I'm just saying.
How old are you? 38.
39.
Yeah. You all come up here about the same age, same problems. Spend about 50 weeks a year getting knots in your rope, and then you think 2 weeks up here'll untime for you. None of you get it. Do you know what the secret of life is?
No, what?
This.
Your finger?
One thing. Just one thing. You stick to that and everything else don't mean shit.
That's great, but what's the one thing?
That's what you gotta figure out.
Normally I'd apologize for the language there, but I figure we're all adults and we can probably handle a little of that now again. You're watching far worse stuff on your TV shows, so don't worry about that, especially if you were a fan of some of the shows we have in mind. All right. So what does he say? He says one thing, just one thing. So what is Curly talking about here but priority? What is a priority in your life? Or better yet, what is the highest priority in your life? What is the one thing in your life that takes precedence over all of the others? Find that, and everything else pales in comparison. And I would add this: when you find that one thing, and you stick to that one thing, everything else starts to make sense and actually begins to fall in line to support that one thing. Everything else stops usurping your time and energy away from the one thing and begins to focus your time and energy towards the one thing. All the nonsense begins to melt away, allowing all that truly matters to rise to the top. And what is brilliant about this scene in the movie is that Mitch asks the question that everyone asks at this point in the conversation, which is this: that's great, but what's the one thing? And Curly, representing the guru, the teacher, the enlightened master, representing the truth, Curly replies, that's what you gotta figure out. Gosh darn it! Can't someone just tell me what it is finally so I don't have to figure it out on my own? Can't it just be spoon-fed to me while I sit back and watch Netflix eating Cheetos? Can't that please just happen? Why would I have to put forth any effort to find solutions for my life? Well, don't worry if you don't figure out the one thing, because the world will give you multiple empty things to constantly and endlessly chase after. So there I was in Los Angeles, my life sort of a blur, and a shift happened for me. I moved with my daughter and her mother to Las Vegas and started working at the MGM Grand Hotel. And it was there that my one thing started to come into focus. As a freshman sound guy on the MGM Grand sound crew, there was probably about 25 of us at the time, I had to take all of the worst shifts. I was on call for any time and any day, and more often than not, that meant I was working late into the night almost every night of the week. And I was not getting to spend time with my family at home, which was starting to wear on me. And after some years of struggling with this schedule I had to do and struggling with that situation, it finally became clear to me that my family was more important than my work. And it began to shift my focus away from work and more towards my family. We actually, as a family, decided to scale back our lives so we could live on less income and I could spend more time at home with the family. I actually scaled back my days and told my boss I only want to work 3 days a week. You can schedule me whatever time you want during those days. I'm only going to work 3 days a week because I want to spend time with my wife and daughter. So we scaled back. Now, can you imagine, listen to this, this is insane. Can you imagine a sane person doing that? Choosing to live on less in order to have more time to enjoy the things that matter? Mind-blowing. That's only what crazy people would do in this society. It makes no sense. I tell you, don't even consider that. You'd be losing your mind if you even considered that option, because that's a crazy mindset. But making family my priority gave me so much needed focus that had been missing for far too long. You see, before, if someone had asked me, as they often did, if I was willing to fly out of town to go mix sound at a show or work more hours and more hours into the night, whatever it might be, I would pretty much just say yes, because I really didn't know what my focus was. So why wouldn't I go do that? There was nothing to weigh my decision against. But as soon as I established a priority, I established my one thing, before I answered those types of questions, I would now ask myself, does this align with my priority? Which for me meant, does it give me more overall quality time with my family? If the answer was no, then I could easily answer no. I will not travel out of town for this gig. If the answer was a yes, I could easily answer yes. A new experience of clarity and focus was emerging in my life. Should we buy this house? Should we buy this car? Should we move to a new town or location? Should we change careers? These big questions are much easier when the next question you ask yourself is, does this align with my priority? Focus is a powerful spiritual tool, as the master teacher, Jesus Christ, pointed out in the book of Matthew. He said, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, the whole body shall be full of light. An eye that is single is an eye that is focused on a priority. And years after my family became my priority, I would discover the power of having God and my spiritual practice as a priority. And that is the truth as I experience it. We're going to take a moment to go into the silence, into meditation, to take these ideas a little bit deeper. So I invite you, wherever you are in time and space, unless you're driving a car, to close your eyes, to become more centered on the breath, to sit up straight, to relax the shoulders, to allow to come to mind all the things that tug at your consciousness, that tug at your time, to tug at your energy, whether it be work, family, finances, travel, hobbies, friends, relatives, whatever it might be, allow them to just pile up into the mind, as they're usually there anyway throughout the day. And now I want you to use the power of your imagination and just wrap all of those up into a nice piece of Christmas wrapping paper. Slap a nice red bow on that bad boy and shove it into a mailbox and walk away. You don't need those right now. There's a part of you that's very clear, that's intentioned, that knows what is the highest and best for you and all of those around you, that knows your deepest, utmost desire and need. It knows exactly what will bring you fulfillment, joy, and peace, and abundance. Not the kind that's been slapped with a label that says new and improved, that the world puts in front of you and says, here you go, this will make you happy. We're talking about a part of you that's so deep and so still, that doesn't have to sell the idea to you, because it's simply truth. Like the truth that if you set a boat upon the water, it's going to float. It doesn't matter how flashy the boat is. It doesn't matter how much you paid for it. It doesn't matter what the state of the water is. The truth is, it will float. Because there's that single truth, that single reality. That the way the boat displaces the water underneath itself causes it to stay on top. So there is a truth sitting within us, like a still water. A calling that doesn't call out, but waits for us to call in. Something beyond the tangible of the day-to-day, beyond the short-term thought or desire or whim. Something that goes from year to year, decade to decade, and still brings you joy, fulfillment, and peace. Something completely independent of the world situation, your relationship situation, your financial situation, your health situation. Something bigger than all of that, that no matter what is going on, brings you back to joy, fulfillment, and peace. And so we take a moment to see ourselves like a boat resting on this water of stillness. If I'm relaxed enough and aware enough, I will see a common thread moving in and through all the things I enjoy and can't wait to do. I'll even see that thread moving through the things I don't enjoy and I try to stay away from. If I could follow that thread with my mind's eye and my internal wisdom, I would see it laying a path to the ultimate blissful me. But it'll require me to slow down, to be aware, to observe, and to use my power of wisdom to discern. So as I begin to go forth now from this time of silence and meditation, I make a commitment to myself to do that, to go forth a little bit less hurried, a little bit more aware, a little bit more clear. And so it is. And when I'm ready, I can open my eyes. So we have a twofold process for this service which we're working on, and I'm hoping that we fulfill our mission every time we come here. The mission is transforming lives, inspiring people to make a positive difference in our world. We say it's a twofold process because we're transforming lives, not just our lives, but working to transform the lives of the people around us. And this is a topic that actually came up on our last ministers' call, about the idea of, is my practice about me, or is my practice about those around me? It depends actually on the faith that you're following in, because some people would say, no, actually your practice is about you. Other faiths would say, no, your practice is about all of us. The fact is, as far as I see it, as far as I experienced, it is both. We are raising our own consciousness, our own awareness, but that is in and of itself not enough. We are raising our consciousness and our awareness so that we can then go out and help other people raise their consciousness and their awareness, primarily through our raised consciousness, awareness, presence that goes out into the world. Jesus role modeled this. He came into his enlightenment. He didn't just bail on us and walk off into the forest and then commune with God. He came back and did the work to help us follow in those footsteps. So we do that tonight by giving and serving. We can't come to the building and physically serve in this way, so serving by spreading this message, this positive message, with all the negativity that's flowing out there on the internet right now. You've got to share services like this and positive messages like this and tell people, hey, don't forget, this is what's real. This is what actually matters. This is what's actually important. This should be your focus in your life. So by supporting Unity of Boulder, we are doing a twofold process. We're supporting the organizations that's helping our own personal and spiritual transformation while simultaneously supporting the organization that's helping the transformation of so many people here in Boulder and around the world. So if you can give to this organization and support us in this way, we're still doing everything we were doing before. We are considered an important business, so we have stayed open this entire time. Our staff's still here. The heat's still on, though turned off in many rooms that aren't being used. But we are still here, and we really can use your gifts at this time. So we do have many ways of giving to support this mission, this ministry. You can text to give. You can give online at Unity of Boulder. You can actually call our office and set up recurring donations, which is a crucial part of us being able to plan and budget for the year. And you can do it also through the Easy Tithe app. Set up a recurring gift there. So I invite you to do that now. If somewhere on your screen you see a donate button, you scroll up, you scroll down, you can be a part of this process. We appreciate that. Okay. We have some announcements. We do have our ongoing Zoom groups going on throughout the week, and if you do not have the login information for that, you can email us at info@unityofboulder.com and we'll get you that login information. We're having some really great discussions in these groups, so you don't want to miss this opportunity to increase your practice. Most of the spiritual growth that people have around a spiritual center like this is not from the services, but the discussions that happen around the services. So we have the Monday meditation that I lead tomorrow night at 5:30 p.m. Not tomorrow night, Monday night. That's on Zoom. Coffee with the ministers twice a week. The singles group is still meeting. Alternative healing group, the women's discussion group every week. And then Sunday fellowship right after the second service tomorrow. We'll be doing fellowship on Zoom. And we invite you not just to come and not have really an idea why you're there, come with questions. We're here to grow and expand our consciousness in these times. Come with questions that you heard about the talk or the services or things that came up through the week so we can address those questions. Otherwise, it just winds up with Santisha, Jack, and myself just bantering about family stuff and raccoons. Seems to be a lot of talk about raccoons. We are still doing the food drive with the barrels outside, and I believe this coming Tuesday, it's 10:30, is it not? That we'll be outside. So the ministers and some of the staff are going to be outside in front of the church with our masks and gloves and hazmat suits and boots, receiving food donations. So if you can collect some food from a grocery store or wherever, you can come drop it off in person so that we can say hello to you as you go by in your car. We'd love to have that contact, and if you're really curious how we've aged over this period of time, you can come see us in person and check out the new wrinkles we've got and stuff going on. Very exciting, so you don't want to miss that opportunity. Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. If you can't get here in person, you can join us for the Coffee and Ministers. We'll have the laptop out there, so you'll see it live on Zoom. Don't forget, we do have 2 services tomorrow, 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. The first service, 9 a.m., is a more meditative experience with Jack giving a talk there as well. Second service will be my sister, Santisha, and she'll be at 11 a.m. giving a powerful message with the music and everything else going on with that. All right, I think I hit everything, and if I didn't, the website calendar has a plethora of information. Thank you for joining us tonight, and go with peace. Good night.